today we are going to be talking about mastering your account-based marketing, especially in the tech B2B space. So I have got I've got none other than David Cockerham. I mean, he's been on our past show or podcast or or entertainment, or all about entertaining our audiences, I guess, when it comes to tech B2B. So, David, welcome.
Thank you.
And so, just to set the scene, right? Because David comes with a ridiculous sales background. He's not only worked in sales from a front end perspective, but also in terms of sales operations. And I obviously come with a lot of marketing background. And for me, I wanted to have this entire ABM process. I mean, we get so many questions asked by our clients on what is the right approach, what are the key considerations, and how do you really optimize ABM, and especially in the tech B2B space, right? Because you're talking about ridiculous amount of north of $1 million deals sometimes, and it has to be account based all the time, right? And no matter how much we talk about it, when we start implementing the campaigns, it becomes a really broad brush campaign, and we have to continuously tell our clients to, right, come back to the surface. This is what we want to do. Let's not lose focus. And um, and I thought, hey, you know what? Let me get the most sales sales background genius on this call, and I we can mix things up and
Don't
talk a little
oversell
bit
me.
more about account-based marketing.
Great. Oh, I'm happy to be here, Sandeep. Thanks for the invite. I've been with HubSpot for about a year, but before that, as Sandeep said, I've got lots of direct selling experience. Also, a few roles in sales operations, so preparing the sales teams to sell the best they possibly could.
Yeah,
And so that's given me a lot of experience in HubSpot and other CRMs through the years. So happy to join.
thank you very much, and I really appreciate you giving us the time. And we just want to keep things simple, right? So let's kick off on this whole ABM initiative. So everyone keeps on talking about ABM, and obviously a lot of buzzwords and keywords start getting thrown around. So let me share my screen and see if we can talk about some key buzzwords. And this is just from a housekeeping initiative. We are not. I'm pretty sure most of you marketers out there know what these mean, but just for us to, what are the key buzzwords that obviously get thrown around? Now, some of the ones are target account list. Now, that sounds pretty easy, but it is very similar to your total addressable market, in my opinion. I don't know what, David, you think, but you need to have a firm grip on what your target account is. And this is where the sales and marketing initiatives start marrying together.
Yeah, and this is a crucial first step, which we'll talk about in a couple slides. I think there's a tendency to pick too many target accounts
Yeah,
and spread the marketing team and the sales team too thin. So it's there's some guidance in the document that we will address a few times today, saying between 5 and 10 accounts, I think, per salesperson is plenty. Anything
mhm.
more than that, it spreads you too thin. So, and certainly you might want to start with a smaller number than that. So,
Yeah, totally, totally. And then ICP, ideal customer profile. How many times do we hear ideal customer profile? But again, when we talk about ideal customer profile, they mix that up with the target account list
yeah,
because they think, well, ideal customer profile, again, as a marketer, we always keep on saying ideal customer profile has to not be just your demographic, it has to have your technographic, it has to have your firmographic information, it has to have so many different elements together to tell you what exactly your ideal customer profile looks like and how many of them are in your account map.
right. And again, this is a crucial step for you and the sales team and the marketing team to be on the same page, because rarely does a salesperson and someone in marketing have the exact definition of an ideal customer for their company. So it's crucial to sit down and map that out. Most salespeople think that their ideal customer profile is much more broad than the marketing team, and so you need to come together and narrowly define that so that you can pick the right, you know, apply that profile to your customer list or your total addressable market and pick your target accounts accurately in the beginning.
Agreed. Agreed. And also not mix them up with the buy personas. They're totally different. so
Right.
so all we when we do buy persona mapping exercise, we sometimes take 3-4 hours just to come up with 2-3 key identified buyer personas. People think, oh, the buyer personas is probably some bunch of job titles that we need to target. Not. There's so much more information. There's psychographic and then demographic. There's so much. But anyway, not mixing things up. But these are some of the terms that you will start seeing thrown around. Buying committee, air cover. Um, so buying committee obviously is your stakeholders, a group of stakeholders, obviously, and who will influence your deal, right? They will sit not from an influencer perspective, but also they might hold budgets, some might be decision makers, some might be your champions. And the most important ones are your blockers. So, how do you make sure that you know exactly who your blockers who your blockers are and have a plan for each of them? Yeah.
Yeah, I think human nature, dictates that we avoid our blockers, right? But it's a crucial step, and it's become more and more important as the economy gets tougher to sell in.
Mm,
There are typically more people involved in a buying decision, so
mm.
therefore in a buying committee. And inevitably, there'll be somebody in one, two, or three people that aren't in the buying committee who are potential blockers that you have got to get in front of and hear their objections and work through them.
Objections. That's totally right. Because you would have a much stronger plan with a blocker than your influencer or your buyer, in my opinion. Because you need to be able to have your messaging, your content, your tone of voice all around the objections that the blockers might come up with. If you're able to nail that part, I think half your problem is probably taken care of. Lead servicing, David. I think probably I'll throw this one to you. Lead servicing is another thing that keeps on jumping up and down. A lot of things people think, yeah, that's lead handover, but I think it's much more than that.
Yes, my expertise leans towards more of the handoff between sales and marketing and getting that right because it's typically not handled. There's always room for improvement in every company, I think, in that respect. But um, I think some companies over engineer it, and some companies don't spend the time they should. But in the context of ABM, the task force that you put together, which we'll talk about, I think, in the next slide or two, um, handing off and the communication between marketing and sales is crucial, right? And we'll address that a little bit more, as we just said. So,
Totally, totally. So, look, without further ado, right? So, I want to optimize our time. Um, One of the key things that get asked in most of our meetings is what are the foundational elements of a really strong ABM, right? Now, I know you and I talked about this so many times in our conversations. So, if we had to come up with top five um, foundations of a strong ABM, where would we start? We start obviously with the ICP, and have you segment and put them into tiers, right? Would that be the first stage?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, picking a team, getting your team together, and then sitting down and defining your ideal customer profile. I think a lot of companies might have done the ideal customer profiling, but maybe just from the marketing perspective and not involve the sales team or the other way around. So getting everyone together and doing that first crucial step, I think, is important. But I'd like to touch on that. I think ABM has a high cost to sale compared to most other types of selling motions, right? So the cost to acquire, or CAC as they call it, is quite high. So the type of deals and customers and industries that fit really nicely into ABM are where you have a high ASP. And what I mean by high ASP is that typically if you're selling something where the customer's finance department has to approve the purchase, that's kind of the bar. And if you're above that bar, then ABM is a very good fit. Now, it doesn't have to follow that exactly, but that's kind of the first one. The second is that you have a finite TAM, or total addressable market. So you're in a situation where you can't sell to everyone in the world. So in my former company, we were an ed tech vendor, and we had a finite number of large school districts that we could sell a product to. So ABM was a good fit, right? And the third kind of criteria, I think, to when you're trying to decide if you're going to go down this journey with ABM is there a buying committee of 3 or more people in your prospect or in your customer? And if that answer is yes, which is more and more nowadays, yes, then I think ABM is a perfect fit. So sorry, Sandeep, back to the first one. Your ideal customer profile is crucial because, as I said in the beginning, I think in a lot of companies there is a tendency for siloed decisions around the ICP. So a sales team might have an idea of what their ideal customer is, which is anybody who will buy often, and then the marketing team will have another definition of who the ideal customer profile. So building this team, getting them together, and deciding on that first step, I think, is crucial.
That's absolutely right. And actually, I've got a question from Sarah here, and around that. So the main thing she's asking is, how do we best engage our sales teams on that initial stages of planning? So when we're talking about this ICP and TAL, and because most of the times they don't have buy-ins from the salespeople, or probably they think, oh, ABM is such a marketing thing, right? And a lot of times we fail to explain that ABM is not demand generation to accounts. It is not that. It's literally identifying who your key trigger points are within the organization. So, David, do you want to answer that question? How would you involve or make sure that your sales teams are engaged?
So it can be as simple as one marketing person and one salesperson. That can be the definition of a task force, right? And they get
Mhm.
together and they talk about an ideal customer and they talk about a target list. And
Mhm. Oh, you're
lockstep, right?
muffling up. You're muffling up.
Oh,
Uh,
sorry. My microphone?
yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, there has to be buy-in between sales and marketing. So creating a task force initially, having everyone agree on these 2 crucial first points. What's your ideal customer look like and who is on a target list, your short target list that you're going to start with?
So the question goes back to the sales teams to begin with, to what they're. So most of the times they're going to say, hey, here is my account plan for the year, and this is what I want to do. But a lot of times, because they have, I don't know, either a regional or an industry focus, they somehow just start getting some databases or somewhere and saying this is going to be my target list. Not much thought has gone through that, right? So, Sarah, to answer your question, and the way we do it generally with our clients is we run an absolute combined workshop. It starts with 1 or 2 hour workshops to begin with. And this generally happens at the early stages of the year or whatever your planning cycle is. And we say, right, you are going to have a single minded, single persona, single offer focus for the entire year, given that whatever the time frame that you guys have agreed to. You need to be able to say, hey, if these are your type of accounts that you want to focus on, we need to know absolutely ins and out about them. And this is where, I mean, there's method to madness. When we stick to those workshops, we actually ask those questions, the right kind of questions, in a step by step way, where they themselves come back and say, oh, damn, I had no idea about this about my own clients, or I did not think it from this angle, or this is definitely a reason for me to have more touch points with my clients. Like reason of call, we call it, or call to action, or compelling reason. It has to be built right from the starting of the planning stages. And look, a lot of times this has to be a bit of a top down approach. Your senior management have to push that this integration within marketing and sales has to happen right from the beginning stages. So if you are in it, you will win it. Sorry, it's a bad tagline, but I don't know if that answered your question, Sarah. But ideally, initial stages, get the key stakeholders together, get top down approach, like in terms of your influencers within the business who are your senior executives to make sure that they're leveraging the sales people together and start with the ICP process. Um, right, then plan your touch points and triggers by tier. I would like to focus on the word called tier. because a lot of times here we muck it up because we say, right, it is planned touch points. Yeah, we plan touch points, but not quite here. So what's the significance of that, David?
The way we do it at HubSpot is in the system. It's you can identify tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and they're typically all good fits for your target account list. But your target account list might be too long, and you might have like your 2-tier customers might be 90% a good fit, and then the tier 3s might be also let's say an 80% fit, but they might take longer, or you put them on a back burner a bit. So because you want to focus on a smaller number. So if you put 3, 4, or 5 in the beginning target accounts in your tier 1, and then you agree with marketing the air cover, the sequences, the touch points, and you map it all out, the journey that you're going to go down, even down to the point where down to buyer role. So you can have very specific customized messaging for different buyers, a finance buyer versus a tech buyer versus a C-level, or somebody who runs a support organization, have very targeted collateral that you can reuse across multiple accounts with some customization. But I think that very specific buyer role targeting is effective in this context.
I agree. I agree. And I'll give you a quick example. Recently, we ran a campaign where we were again targeting multiple buyers within the ABM plan that we had, and we started. So it was obviously a tech campaign, and it was about reducing the impact. I don't want to go into too much deeper details about the messaging, but the blockers were the actual tech people because the way the messaging was coming across was that if you had this solution, you guys are not going to be needed. And 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 that's, although it fit really well with the CFO because they want to reduce cost, it fit really well with the CIO because they want to reduce the cost, but it did not fit well with the actual buyers. When I say buyers, the actual users, because they feared that this would
Yeah.
make them out of job.
Yeah.
So we first address the blockers with, when we have those buyer persona campaigns or profile builds, we do these role plays on what sort of objections are we going to get, and literally from your sales, pre-sales, uh, delivery, even your telemarketers in your organizations, or you might call them whatever the name is. We bring them all and say, how would you handle this objection? What sort of objections you get? And we created a marketing campaign just for those blockers first, and that totally changed the gambit because once you have them on your side, the rest of all the buyers are, hey, you know what, where do I sign? Because that's easy to address those issues when the blockers have been sorted. So look for your blockers, in my opinion. Great. Let me move on, unless anyone has questions. And I think I just saw a question come from Marie. Marie, yes, this webinar is recorded, and and you will receive a copy of this. And how about you do this? Ping me on LinkedIn since you're watching this on LinkedIn Live. Send me a ping so I don't forget to send you the link of the final presentation after this. And we might actually come up with a more compressed version of that as well. So I'll send you that. Right. So moving on. Point number 3: foundations of a strong ABM. Now, foundations of a strong ABM, where we talk about aligning sales and marketing. I think we talked about this, right? I think
A
we
bit,
covered this.
yeah. I'd
So,
add one point though, Sandeep, in that at HubSpot, the way we work internally for a sales team, there are a few triggers or lead scoring mechanism that we would use that we might want to fine tune in an ABM sense. So I might, as a salesperson, want to know much earlier from a lead score perspective when one of my key contacts in these accounts that I'm really customized or I really am focused on making contact, I might want to alter for this instance how soon I hear about these leads, how quickly they get to me from marketing. And so we might adjust some of those lead scoring and other things that we work on. So
and this is where the automation piece that we are really here to talk about is when you can talk about how, like, I am a believer that your company's is only as big as its tech, like as its systems. If you don't have certain ways of managing and reducing your time or energy or money, I think you're going the wrong way. So in the long run, when you talk about scalability, you need to have the right tools, and that's why we've used HubSpot forever, but ultimately it all comes down to we are learning everything every day. There are a lot of times we say, "Geez, I didn't know about this. That we can do it there." So um, we want to talk quickly again about reiterating or experimenting, right? So once you're in market, you've done this, there is no way you're going to have success story within the first campaigns. You need to be able to have that learning mechanism, and that should be a part of your DNA. Everything that you do will need a certain level of consistency, at least over a period of time. So you have those learnings and say, right, this worked well, this didn't work well. I can do more of this. I can't do more of that. So if my paid ads are doing well, but my social selling is not doing that right because everyone's freaking tired with with so much crap that goes on LinkedIn these days, we need to be able to start creating a different vibe. So we can start a baseline strategy, but how it will evolve will be based on your experimentation and your results.
Yeah, and A/B testing is easy to set up in the system, and even down to how well did let's say you had a successful campaign, you can look back and say, okay, well, we were initially successful in reaching the contacts by these certain roles. Let's
Mhm.
say you can look at it very granularly, and then you can go back and fine tune the messaging in the role specific outreach that wasn't as successful in the next
Mm,
campaign, right? And you
mm,
can
mm.
continually improve, right?
That is correct. That is correct. So, how about we go straight into the main topic of what sort of tools? Now, I know with HubSpot we can do so many things, but when we're talking about automation and creating that baseline plan, what is available? And I'm happy to share my screen at the moment. So, David, this might be something you can touch base on. And Sarah, to your question earlier, this is something that we use for planning with our salespeople. So what we do is we start creating a list of accounts, and that target account list in HubSpot it's called target accounts, but technically it's the ABM offset or subset of HubSpot. So David, why don't you tell us how would we technically work this?
So ABM is a feature that you can turn on within the portal, the HubSpot portal. And this page that we're looking at now is the grouping together of all of your target accounts and your activities and the outcomes. So I think it's important to keep in mind that um, you know ABM is not about creating activities; it's about creating business outcomes, right? And so you can see here in this what we call a target accounts index page, a lot of different pieces. How many target accounts you're currently chasing, how many open deals that's created, what is the value of those open deals, and then also some missing information like your how many buyer roles are you missing in these target accounts, and how many missing decision makers. So all of this is a view that both marketing and sales, all the task force can view and keep track of the activities and also the outcomes, which is crucially important.
And this is where you also have different buying committees set up, and you can actually tag people within each organization. So um, what we do generally is we we would have an account which would have about 5 or 6 different buyers or buying committee, and we will actually say which ones are the blockers, which we feel are the buyers, which we feel are the decision makers, which we feel are the ones who have the budget. And once you know who they are, the kind of campaigns that you build over a period of time. So it could be a solution for a particular industry, and then you need to have a particular flavor of information going towards based on who the buyer personas are within the buying community. Yeah.
Yep. Now the next slide shows a simple, I guess, workflow or workflow where you can identify additional target accounts in your database, and your database can be enriched from third-party sources, or it can be completely organically grown. But in this simple, workflow, we're looking at companies. we're separating out companies that have 50 million in revenue and then 25, and then we're putting them into tiers, which we've mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
This workflow could be much more complex. It could be, we want to add target accounts to the tier 1 where we know 3 decision makers, has an annual revenue, is geographically located in this space and in this industry. It can be much more granular. This is a very simple example of a workflow that can be set up to hunt for more accounts to be added to the ABM strategy.
But David, for this, those accounts need to be in your database first with those relevant information.
Yeah, correct.
So
With this example, yeah.
correct. So ideally, a lot of my clients would probably leverage other agencies like us to
Yeah.
build their initial ideal customer profile, or even what sort of how big is the market, how many accounts are there. Now we do that through a lot of tools like the Zoom infos of the world, or we start leveraging intent from Bombora to find out who they are. And once we know who they are, we need to build them and use them without making sure that they're yet not your marketing contacts, because you don't have opt-in. You start connecting and communicating, but this is the place where you start planning and then seeing how many of those have actually converted into your database just as contacts first. And then what are they doing within once they're in your contact space? What sort of information? That's where the lead scoring begins, I guess.
Yep. And the next slide goes kind of back to the index. And on the left side, there was an option to prospects and recommendations. If you click on prospects, the system will go and look at, in this context, what it means. A prospect means is it's an individual's IP address that we have stored information about, but they haven't yet identified who they are. And so we keep track of that. And you could sort this page by number of page views. It groups them by a company. So this is all publicly sourced information. And so this will help you identify potentially additional target accounts that have been on your website, downloading things, interacting with you in different ways. But you may not know who the individuals are yet. So this is information that HubSpot pulls together into a prospect list in the ABM context.
That's fantastic. So let's say, and I see these updates come on a weekly or in fact daily basis, right? I see he's your prospects who visited your website today every day, which is great. But once we see them, they get stored in the prospects field. I think that comes into the uh, if I'm not wrong, into the reports area, or you can just literally look them up from your small search box at the top, dialog box. You can find where they're stored. But then, David, if is there a way you can create a smart list from them or save them for future way if there is a contact that we create, it automatically gets linked up?
So the activity gets tracked via the HubSpot tracking code.
Yeah.
And it gets saved in the database via associated to an IP address. Then in the future, if that person fills out a form, via CTA, a call to action, and they identify themselves, all that back history, they downloaded this website or this, they viewed this webinar, they downloaded this white paper, whatever they did, all that information gets then attached to the person when they raise their hand and say, this is who I actually am, right? And then all that information stays in HubSpot going forward. And so your marketing team, all your customer facing teams, so your marketing team, your sales team, and eventually your support team has all that information about the contact stored in HubSpot.
That is incredible. And another point I would like to make on that is a lot of times we call this the trifecta of where the information based campaigns go. So stage one, once you, and again coming back to Sarah's point earlier that you made, that you have your ideal customer profile and your total addressable market sorted, but then you look at certain data like intent data, try to look at what sort of how many companies are popping up. And then the trifecta is when you merge that data with the people who are actually looking at your company through website and through all these prospect lists that we see. That is the trifecta where we say that is our ideal customer profile. They are researching about your solution and they are on your website. So that should not even be marketed to. I would believe that that should go straight to sales for next level conversation. The conversion rates from those activities are ridiculous. So that's something to keep in mind.
So the
All
next
right.
slide jumps into an out of the box webinar. So beyond prospects, there you go. Out of the box, there's a dashboard for ABM. It has 9 standard reports. You may want to make simple changes here and there, depending on the context of your business and what's most important to you. But right out of the box, you have a dashboard that looks something like this. So let's say you've been running your ABM on 4 or 5 accounts for a month or 2. You can start utilizing this dashboard, both marketing and sales, to track the outcomes, not just your activities.
That is fantastic. I would I haven't, to be honest, used this to the T, but this is something I want to go into at a more better reporting perspective. This would be good. Excellent.
And
Um,
the last bit is something I'm quite excited about. I think,
we all are.
like most people, you probably read a lot about Chat GTP in the last 6 months, but you may not have gone out and actually played with it. I just started this week because we announced internally that we are going to integrate it into our platform. At first, I didn't
Are you
see.
muffling up?
Sorry.
You're muffling up a little
Oh,
bit.
sorry. I didn't see how that was going to play out exactly, but I've done some research since then. I'm quite excited about this now. We have version 2 in alpha, not even in beta yet, of us utilizing. At first, it was Chat GTP, and now it's GPT-4. And then, so what that means is you can ask, I'll give you some basic examples. A sales manager can ask ChatSpot, which is our version. Internally can say, hey, what was the largest deal in South America last year? And in 5 seconds, it'll come back with an answer. And then beyond that, crucially, it will offer that sales manager to create that report. So the artificial intelligence will go create the report within HubSpot. And then the sales manager can add it to a dashboard, or they can even say, please create that into a report and add it to this dashboard, and it all happens. It's incredible.
Unreal.
So you have to know how to code. It might be putting people in sales ops out of business a bit in the future, but interestingly, I went and I had the AI. I asked it a question around account-based marketing. I said, what are the interesting new ways companies are using account-based marketing? Because it's been around for a few years, and it came back in 8 seconds with 300 words and some pretty cool things that companies are doing. So it understood my context. It understood ABM, didn't ask me to clarify, and it went out and found 7 examples of cool things that are happening now. And one of them is around technology stack. And it even kind of blows its own horn a bit in saying that it's AI and machine learning and predictive analytics are the
Of
future.
course.
Of course, the machine answered that way. And then it asked me, because I had it tied into my Google Docs and Sheets and slides, it said, do you want to create this into a presentation, or do you want to create this into a Word doc or a Google Doc, or do you want to create an email? And who do you want to send it to? And I can just talk to it. I don't have to type anything because I talk faster than I type. So I found this incredible. So that's 2 contexts. A third context, I think, from a marketing perspective, would be if a marketing professional needs to write some copy around a new product, you can simply ask the machine to do it. It comes back with 100 words. If you want 500 words, you just ask it to write 500 words, and then you can ask it to be more casual or more formal. It comes back in 8 seconds with all the
Unbelievable.
changes. And then you have a starting point, right? It's not going to do your job for you, but it's going to save you time by by saving you a lot of time. And then you can say, well, okay, turn that into an EDM, and it'll turn it
Unreal.
into an EDM and save it as a template or whatever you want within HubSpot. So that's just coming integrated into our platform. We're very excited about this. And I started thinking about what are the applications, but I guarantee the list of applications, Sandeep, that you and I would come up with right now in 6 months won't even touch the surface.
It's crazy. It's crazy, and we're already seeing the impact of that as we go through. Like Chat GPT is obviously creating a lot more options, and AI and machine learning. And at the end of the day, the more tools it starts integrating with, the more optimization it's going to see in the long run. So this is quite exciting.
So
So
we've opened the alpha testing up to like 10,000 people. They signed up like in an hour, filled it up. So hopefully with beta, we'll be able to add more people and people can go in and play with it. It's just the ability to pull information out of the CRM is incredible, and asking it to do things for you. It's just it's kind of limitless. So we're very excited about this coming down the pipe. So
that's crazy. All right. Well, we're a little bit over time anyway, but um, so what are the final remarks that you would like to make before we go? Is there any? I know we talked about those 5 steps that we should work on, but from a tools perspective and having the automation play, what are the top 5 automation plays that you should have considering the tools?
a tool will definitely help you stay on track and allow you to measure an ROI and decide in your organization if you want to expand the ABM to maybe you trial it with one salesperson, and
Mhm.
having the right tool in place will absolutely guarantee that you can do that. But I think the most important thing about ABM, I'll leave you with, is that it's not an initiative for sales and marketing to just create more activities.
Mm.
It has to drive business outcome, has to create results in the form of new customers.
And and you're right. And there are 3 things or 4 things I want to finish off by saying what is ABM not? And ABM is not a lead generation exercise for accounts. It's not. Um, Using intent data and ABM is not the same thing. We need to understand that we can leverage intent data for your ABM, but without you cannot replace one for other, right? So it's not that. Um, Account planning and ABM is not the same thing. So
Yeah.
account planning happens at a sales level where they feel that's what they should focus on because that's what their remit is for the year. That's how they're incented for. But does not mean those are the accounts in market looking for a solution. So account-based marketing needs to have a mix of insights about your clients, where they go, what do they want to. And finally, ABM is not a standalone practice. The air cover that you create, all the other surround tactics that you have should complement your ABM strategy. So for all you marketers out there, if you think most of the times in tech we see ad hoc marketing come through and say, oh, okay, I've got 20K for this month or this quarter, let's do ABM. It doesn't work like that. You need to have ABM that is always on 24/7 to a defined audience for the rest of the year. And then you keep on tweaking your way, of course, but it's not one on the or ad hoc activity.
Perfect. Good summary.
Well, well, with that, David, I would like to thank you for your time.
Thanks for
As
inviting me.
no worries, and you're not off the hook yet, right? So there's probably going to be more other dialogues and more other sessions we can have, maybe more on marketing centric or maybe more sales or singular topics. But ABM is something that is really close to what we speak to most of our clients. So thank you for your time. I'll probably open this up for any more questions that we might have. Let me have a look at our private chat. So we had some from Sarah, we had Marie. Anyone else? We can stay on for like a couple minutes, and if not, we will close the session.
We can take questions offline, of course, after the fact.
That's totally right. So,
All
and
right.
most of these
Thanks.
most of these questions will be on our channel anyway. So, David, thank you for your time. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
inviting
it,
me.
and we'll talk soon.
All right.